Harriet Hanson Robinson, the girl who led a strike at age 11. Before Harriet Hanson Robinson ever set foot in the mills, her world had already fallen apart. Her father had died unexpectedly, leaving behind a grieving widow and 2 daughters with no way to support themselves. Her mother, Mrs. Hanson, was forced to take a job as a boarding house keeper for the mills, one of the few respectable positions available to a woman on her own. But even then, that wasn't enough. Harriet, just 11 years old, had no choice but to go to work herself. She had no idea that within a year she would become one of the first female strike leaders in American history. Harriet wasn't just a quiet worker. She listened. She heard the other girls talking, whispering, about how the company was planning to cut their wages while raising the cost of their rent. The workers were furious. They weren't going to stand for it, so they planned something that had never been done before. A strike. The day came. The older girls came upstairs, and they stopped working. They walked out of the factory, one by one, but on Harriet's floor, her co-workers hesitated. No one wanted to be the first to leave. Harriet felt something stir inside of her, a fire, a refusal to be afraid. And so she stood up, walked away from her machine, and shouted for all to hear, "I don't care what you do. I am going to turn out, whether anyone else does or not." One by one, the other girls followed her. Harriet later recalled, "I was more proud than I have ever been since at any success, and more proud than I shall ever be again until my own beloved state gives to its women citizens the right of suffrage." The strike did not succeed. The mill owners won. But Harriet never regretted her decision to walk out that day. She had tasted what it meant to fight for something bigger than herself, and she would never forget it. They did, however, reprimand Harriet for her choices by firing her mother. Their point was, maybe they couldn't have stopped all the other adult women from going on strike, but an 11-year-old girl she should have been able to still have control over, and since she didn't, they kicked her out onto the streets. Years later, Harriet would become a writer, a historian,